The Marlins take game 1 of the series against the Giants. I'm going to recap that, but Max Meyer is done for the season, and there was a small trade between the Marlins and the Blue Jays. That's all coming up on today's show.
You are Locked On Marlins, your daily podcast on the Miami Marlins.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into Locked On Marlins. I'm your host, Jeremiah Geiger. I've been podcasting about the Marlins for 4 seasons. Go hit me up on X at Jeremiah Geiger 2. And thank you for making Locked On Marlins your first listen of the day. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, which is your team every single day. And this episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONMLB at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. The Marlins take game 1 against a good opponent, the San Francisco Giants. Justin Verlander versus Cal Quantrill. Verlander, of course, a future Hall of Famer. Cal Quantrill struggling for the majority of the season, but he's been pitching much better as of late. But the Marlins kick things off by really jumping on Justin Verlander early. They put up 2 runs in the first. Eric Wagman with an RBI double. Connor Norby a 2-out RBI single. And then in the 3rd inning, Otto Lopez with an RBI single. That made it 3-0. And then you had the Giants put up 2 runs in the bottom of the 5th when Christian Koss homered off of Cal Quantrill to pull within 1. But Xavier Edwards gets an RBI double himself in the the top of the 7th rather. And the Marlins win this game 4-2. Cal Quantrill was okay in this one, nothing spectacular. He failed to complete 5 innings. Early on, he looked really good. And the only real damage against him was that 2-run home run in the 5th. So it seems like for Quantrill, at least in particular, he'll just run out of gas around that 5th, 6th inning mark. And that's just been the story of the season for Cal Quantrill, not being able to consistently pitch deep into games. But the main takeaways I have for this one, now the Marlins got 11 hits, and that's great. I love to see double digits when it comes to the hit column. They were effective with 2 outs. Connor Norby's RBI single, a 2-out hit. Xavier Edwards, RBI double, a 2-out hit. And then the bullpen. The bullpen was extremely, extremely great in this one. Multiple guys. When Quantrill left in the 5th, you had Anthony Bender. He pitched the remainder of the 5th and the 6th inning. Then Cade Gibson, Ronnie Enriquez, and Calvin Fauché. A combined 1 hit between those guys, no runs. They struck out 7, and they win the game. The Giants have a really good bullpen, but in this one, the story of the game, how the Marlins got this victory, was some clutch hitting early on, and then just dominance from the pen. And I'm really happy with that. When the starters aren't being as effective as you'd like them to be, you think of a true ace. The Marlins really haven't had any of their guys pitch like that, except Edward Cabrera at times in terms of just dominance. I mean, Cabrera against the Phillies, that was a dominant performance. He was into the 7th inning. He could have kept going. I've talked about it before. But this team, when they play close games, it's going to usually come down to the bullpen. Who's going to execute? Who's going to make their pitches? And in what spot are these guys coming in? Anthony Bender, Calvin Fauché, Ronnie Enriquez, those are probably your highest leverage relievers. Fauché has settled in nicely after a real rough start to the season. His ERA on the year sits at 3.45. Enriquez, I feel really good about him. I know he's had his struggles at times recently, but in 2/3 of an inning, he struck out both guys. His stuff is just nasty. His ERA is 2.95. Anthony Bender's at a 2.48. And then Cade Gibson, the left-hander out of the Marlins pen, he's had a very quietly effective year, making his major league debut and kind of sticking in this pen. His ERA is a 1.90. So this is probably the best that you're going to face out of the Marlins bullpen, and they all did their job. They all contributed to this victory, and coming off a series in which you took 2 out of 3 from the division rival Atlanta Braves, you're playing a good team, the San Francisco Giants. They just traded for Rafi Devers. They have playoff aspirations. Go into Oracle Park and win it. Go for the sweep. Let's go. I mean, I love winning. That's what it's about, right? Really good pitching matchup tonight, Wednesday night. You have Edward Cabrera for the Marlins. He's been your best starter against the Giants ace, Logan Webb. Logan Webb is nothing short of spectacular. He's a really, really good arm. His ERA is sub-3. He consistently goes into the 7th inning, 8th inning. He's a beast. And the Marlins have their work cut out for them if they want to win this series tonight. I think it's a really good test for Edward Cabrera again against a great team. Well, maybe not great, but very good team. You know, he performed extremely well against the Phillies, and that was at home. And now he's across the country on the road in a pitcher-friendly ballpark against a lineup that's inconsistent. The Giants, yes, they traded for Rafael Devers, but they still have holes on their team, in their lineup. And if Cabrera can command the strike zone, it's a simple formula. Command the strike zone, attack hitters, throw strikes, then he's going to have a good day. And I expect him to go at least into the 6th inning if he limits those walks. Let him go into the 7th. Let him complete the 7th. Have this be an old-fashioned pitching duel, because I don't expect the Marlins rather to get to Logan Webb. I think Logan Webb's going to have a really good outing, and I'd be really shocked if he pitches anything less than 6 innings in this one. So it's going to be interesting. What it's really going to come down to it is when Cabrera inevitably leaves the ball game, how does the bullpen fare again? Can they have the same effect as last night when they threw up a bunch of zeros? Can they do it again? Especially if they're in the lead in these 1-run, 2-run ball games. That's where these wins and losses comes down to, especially for the Marlins, when your starter isn't going 7 or 8 innings. You look at teams like the Phillies or the Giants, guys that on their team that can routinely go deep in the ball games. The Marlins don't do that. It always will come down to the bullpen when they have a lead early on in this game. And that's the second part of it. Attack early on. If you can jump out to an early lead against Logan Webb and Edward Cabrera is effective, then I'm going to feel really good about the Marlins' chances in this game and ultimately winning this series. Now, Max Meyer for the Marlins, he went on the 15-day injured list a while back with a hip issue. It was a very surprising injury. No one really expected it, but the news broke that he is done for the season. He's undergoing hip surgery. He's going to have to attack his rehab, but his 2025 campaign is done. I'm going to discuss that right after this. And this episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Do you ever wish managing your money felt easier? With Monarch Money, it can. Whether you're growing your savings or you're planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building that wealth. When it comes to Monarch Money, sometimes for me personally, I'll be just living life. Like, for example, I'm on this road trip. I'm moving across the country. These expenses add up. I don't even want to look at my bank account at times because it takes you by surprise. You get gas here, you get a bite to eat there. It all adds up. But Monarch Money is going to help you really relegate that spending and have it under control so you can really budget your expenses and budget your money to the highest degree. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONMLB at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONMLB for half off your first year. Thank you to all the everyday listeners out there. I do appreciate you. Share the podcast with your friends, with anybody that is a fan of the Marlins Monday through Friday right here. And if you haven't already, do me a huge favor, hit that subscribe button because it does help me a lot. We're almost to 2,000 subscribers. Let's see if we can get there by the beginning of August. Let's go for a goal. Share the podcast with your friends. Max Meyer is done for the season. It was really a tale of two seasons within this season for Max Meyer. He started off so well, and I bought in. I completely bought in, especially after the Cincinnati Reds game, in which he struck out 14 Cincinnati Reds in under 7 innings. I believe it was. I'll have to pull it up here. It wasn't a huge start because the Marlins haven't had a pitcher complete 7 innings, but nonetheless, 14 strikeouts. And the ball was rolling. The breakout campaign for Max Meyer had begun until it wasn't. And everything came crashing down. He just lost his effectiveness. The slider started getting hit. The fastball, which just isn't a good pitch, when you're overusing the slider and you don't have a good fastball, you really don't have anything going for you. I know he has the sinker and the sweeper that he's incorporated, but the changeup is inconsistent. He doesn't rely upon it. It's not a true, weapon like his slider is. I thought it was much improved, but he just didn't throw it as often as he maybe should have in the last few starts before he went down on the injured list. But now he's done for the season. He's going to be placed on the 60-day IL inevitably. And the Marlins have to reevaluate, where they are with Max Meyer in terms of his spot in the rotation. I don't think you could just pencil Max Meyer into the Marlins rotation next season in 2026 because he hasn't shown the ability to just pick up and go 30 starts in a year. He's never done that. He came up in 2022, had the Tommy John surgery, and then came back 2024, was optioned to the minors. He pitched in minors. He pitched in Miami. He's inconsistent in Miami. And people were already discussing, Max Meyer, is he going to be a relief pitcher? Because, when the Marlins drafted him, that was one of the things they talked about. The draft analysts, he could either be a frontline starter or profile as a closer if he can't develop that third pitch. But it's going to be another injury-prone season for Max Meyer. And heading into next season, I think there should be a conversation whether to move him to the bullpen. Based on his stuff, his consistency, and durability. That's a factor as well now with another injury. He had the elbow injury, Tommy John surgery. It happens to a lot of starters. But I just think, you drafted this pitcher back in 2020. That's 5 years ago. You've yet to see it really all click. We've had glimpses of it, don't get me wrong. Like I said, the beginning of the season, I was sitting here saying Max Meyer is on his way to being an all-star. I was 100% bought in. But given his struggles before the injury, before he was placed on the injured list, and now heading into a year in which you have potentially Adam Meyers in the rotation, Robbie Snelling is on his way up, Thomas White isn't far behind in his trajectory of getting to Lone Depot Park. Max Meyer is just kind of there. He's just kind of another arm, and he's going to fade into pitcher number 4, number 5 in the rotation, a back-end arm that can't be relied upon because of his inconsistencies. I talked about this experiment with Edward Cabrera, and what's crazy is Edward Cabrera very well could be an all-star this season. He's turned a page in his career. I think he gets dealed at the deadline, but there was a point in time where I looked at the inconsistency of Edward Cabrera, the fact that he just never stayed the course for an entire season as a starter. Max Meyer, he's not a super young guy in terms of his baseball journey. And, well, he's young, but it's not like he's a veteran. But the Marlins they kind of know what they have, I guess is what I'm saying. And I think the conversation to be had is, let's move him to the pen, just 1-2 innings a game, and he'll throw gas with that wipeout slider. You can kind of take a step back, maybe ditch the changeup, improve upon the changeup, but you don't have to have 3-4 pitches in your arsenal when you're in the pen to be a high leverage arm. He hit 100 miles an hour when he was at the University of Minnesota. So when you kind of take the pressure off of being a starter and working deep into games and having a high pitch count and just going out there and throwing 20, 25 pitches max for an inning, I think Max's velocity could be 98, 99, 100. And then you have that wipeout slider. That's a pitcher that could be a weapon for you out of the pen. But I do think that it's time as a fan base and for the Marlins as an organization to just kind of realize, when you drafted Max Meyer with the 3rd overall pick, that was one of the risks you took upon yourself. And it was really between him and Asa Lacy. And Max Meyer has been better than Asa Lacy. Asa Lacy bust. He was a bust for the Kansas City Royals. So at least Meyer made the major leagues, but you want to get as much value out of his career as you can. And I just can't buy into him being a starter. Like, this was the opportunity. This really was the last shot for Max, I think, to become a viable option out in the rotation. And it didn't happen. It really didn't. He got blown up the last 7-8 starts. And then he gets injured, which is really unfortunate for him. And I hope Max comes back stronger. I hope he attacks his rehab with enthusiasm and he recovers better than ever to where he was at first. But right now, when you look at the organization and where they are in terms of pitching, I think Max Meyer is an afterthought in terms of who you're focused on to become locked into the rotation. He's not really a priority anymore. Of course he was a 3rd overall pick, but these things happen. These injuries, these inconsistencies, the Marlins have Thomas White, they have Robbie Snelling. It's almost like the new toy, the new prospect you get to play with. Meyer was there one time. There was high expectations for Max, but that's kind of taken a step back, and now with the injury, it's going to be on the back burner for a while. The Marlins made a trade last night with the Toronto Blue Jays. They sent Robinson Piña over to Toronto in exchange for Colby Martin, a minor league reliever. I'm going to talk to you about what the Marlins are getting out of Colby right after this. Guys, you have heard of Viagra, you've heard of Cialis, maybe you've even tried them, but if you're looking for something beyond the usual pill, it's time to meet Rugiet Ready. Rugiet Ready is a next-gen prescription treatment designed to amplify arousal in the brain and boost blood flow. Unlike the usual pills that can take hours, Rugiet's 3-in-1 formula dissolves under your tongue and kicks in fast, on average in 15 minutes. Effects can last up to 36 hours, so you can stay confident and in control when the moment is right. If those traditional options really haven't worked for you guys up until now, Rugiet might be the answer. Over 150,000 men have already made the switch, and it's completely online. Rugiet will connect you to a board-certified doctor, and it will ship your treatment directly to your door, so you don't have to be worried about who's going to know what, nothing like that. It's real It's real stuff, real customer reviews. You can read them on their website. It helps a lot of people feel more confident and present in the moment. Head to Rugiet.com/LockedOnMLB and use code LockedOnMLB to get 15% off today. That's RUGIET.com/LockedOnMLB and use promo code LockedOnMLB for 15% off. Individual results may vary with prescription treatment. Compounded drugs are permitted to be prescribed under federal law, but are not FDA approved and do not undergo FDA safety, effectiveness, or manufacturing review. Please visit the Rugiet website for full safety information. A reminder, if you haven't done so already, hit that subscribe button. It helps me out a lot here on the channel. And also remember that Locked On Marlins is on Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music, all the podcast streaming platforms, so you can listen to the show on the go wherever you are. The Marlins and the Blue Jays made a trade, essentially swapping minor league pitchers. Robinson Piña made his debut last week for an inning, but you know, he was somebody that the Marlins certainly weren't planning to build around, a relief pitcher that, you know, there was really no spot in the rotation for him. Maybe he can be a starter for Toronto because he did start 11 games in AAA, but in the Marlins system, there's just, you know, there's no room for him in the rotation, and they already have Valente Belloso, they have Jansen Junk. So currently, at the moment, he was just going to be stuck in AAA, I think, at least, unless there was an injury. But the Marlins get back Colby Martin. I think it's a really interesting return. Colby Martin was a Division III second baseman. So for those of you who aren't as in tune with college athletics, Division III doesn't offer athletic scholarships. So you have Division I, of course, you have like the LSU, Coastal Carolina, those programs, they get the elite blue chip prospects. But Division III doesn't have any of that. They just, you go to school and you play ball, and you can get recruited, but you're not going to get a full athletic scholarship. And he was an All-American second baseman back in 2021, and he would occasionally throw out of the bullpen. He makes the full-time conversion to being a pitcher, and he's in the Blue Jay system. In college, he hit 102 miles an hour. So he was a Division III second baseman that threw absolute gas. I mean, just a rocket for an arm. And that's what got him to the minor leagues, into professional baseball. He's a strikeout machine. Now he's in high A, and he's 24 years old. He's 5'11", 195 pounds. But I do think it's a really intriguing piece, because anytime you have a guy throwing 98, 99 miles an hour that could reach triple digits and sit in the high 90s, why not? You know, take a chance with him, because I'm completely fine with this trade. If this was a bigger deal where Piña's not the guy going, you're trading, you know, part of your core or something like that, that's a whole other conversation. But I'm fine with it. I am 1,000% behind this, because I think it's a really interesting piece that the Marlins could work with. You have a new player development system in place. He has the arm talent, the natural God-given talent to throw a baseball that hard. All he has to work on is really command and learn how to pitch. Again, he's not a natural pitcher. He was a converted position player. So these things are going to take time. And yes, he's a little bit older. He's 24 years old. But if you can work with him the remainder of the season, you have all of 2026. Who's to say that he doesn't come up, 2027, 2028 and just throw gas out of the pen with improved command, and he's a weapon. Let's see. His career numbers here, he just got promoted to high A. I'll go with this season. In 21 games, he had a 1.54 ERA, 23 and a third innings with 30 strikeouts. So that's really that's some good stuff. Now the issue, of course, comes down to the walks, because last season in particular, he walked 14.54 batters per nine. This season, it's only at 5.5. 4. So still a lot of improvement to go with. I mean, he's a far from a ready prospect, but it's an intriguing part, and this really signifies the start of trade season, and it's indicative that Peter Bendix and the Marlins are already working the lines. They're already trying to figure out who's going to be dealt away. What's the market? They're testing the waters of the trade market right now. And that's just one deal. We're still in June, but I've told you guys this before. Peter Bendix is the type of general manager that will make a deal at any point in the year. It could be the Luis Arias trade in May. It could be Jesus Luzardo, Jake Berger at the winter meetings. You don't know when these deals are going to happen. And we're approaching July. It's really starting to feel like the contenders are starting to separate themselves. I know there's some teams on the fence. Like, for example, the Diamondbacks, they don't know exactly what they're doing. If they're going to sell, they're going to buy because they've just been decimated by injuries. But Marlins, they're clearly going to sell. And there's going to be a lot of expendable players. Nick Forez. I was watching a clip from the Fish on First guys debating whether Nick Forez should be traded this season. And I have my thoughts. I'm going to share it quickly before we get out of here. Nick Forez is a good defensive-minded catcher. He's a veteran presence in the Marlins organization that works really well with the pitching staff. And not just for this season, but next season as well. You're going to have younger guys in the rotation, like when Robbie Snelling makes his Marlins debut, when Adam Meyer comes back into the rotation, Thomas White at some point maybe next year. And Forez is under team control. The Marlins catching situation right now consists of Agustin Ramirez, Liam Hicks, both rookies, and Nick Forez. Is there a market for Nick Forez? Sure. There's a market for a defensive catcher, but it's a very small one, and the return you're going to get for him would not be substantial at all. It would just kind of be like almost a Colby Martin, take a chance, 24 years old in high A, see what happens kind of prospect. I don't think Forez should be traded this year. I think Agustin Ramirez needs to move to full-time designated hitter. I think that experiment just has to happen. You look at his Savant page, and there's really no other way to say it. You can't mince your words here. He's not good. And I know he's 23 years old, and there's time to improve, but he's already DH'd more this season than he's caught. That tells you that, yes, the Marlins are trying to incorporate him into the catching plans, but he's not going to be your franchise catcher. He's going to be a franchise player if his bat continues to stay this way. But in terms defensively behind the plate, I don't think you can rely on two rookies if you trade Nick Forez. Then the rest of the season, you have Liam Hicks and Agustin Ramirez, and that's it. And then Ramirez is going to be catching more, and he's just a liability behind the plate. I think you should move him to DH. The experiment should be done. Nick Forez and Liam Hicks finish the season as the catchers. In the offseason, you can reevaluate if you want to get a veteran catcher to split time with Hicks. If you move on from Forez then, because the offensive ceiling's just not there, I understand it. But playing out the remainder of the season with two rookie catchers, with one of them just being atrocious behind the plate, it doesn't seem like a wise decision. Forez he's on this team because of his defense, because of the chemistry that he's built and the repertoire that he has with the pitching staff. And I'm okay with that. I know how it is. It is what it is. This is his role on the team. If you traded him, you're just getting rid of him for what? A very low-level prospect who is unlikely to give you the same impact that Forez gives you with the pitching staff. So there is that aspect of it too. It's going to be interesting what comes up in the next few weeks. We're in a very interesting time of baseball. I know behind me, I'm in a hotel. I'm traveling across the country, but I'm still going to pump out these podcasts for you guys. That's going to do it for today's edition of Locked On Marlins. For your second listen of the day, go check out the new Locked On MLB Game Night. And until next time, guys, stay safe, stay locked on, and let's go fish.